Hi, welcome. I'm going to demonstrate how to tip a sword in the styles preferred by Wessex. Every year we have to spend an enormous amount of time retipping people's swords, and I'd really like to not this year, so please do me the favour of watching this and doing this before you arrive to the Wessex League. So we require hard tips for all swords at Wessex League. That could be something like a bullet case, that could be Thermoplastic, which is what I'm going to show you in a second. If your sword has a built-in safe tip that's quite wide, it's perfectly fine for everything except for rapier. We require all rapiers to be tipped. Other weapons, if they've got a roll tip that's sufficiently wide and or a flared tip of some kind, are perfectly okay. But this is a rapier, so I'm going to retip it. And also, if your tip is particularly narrow, kind of less than a centimeter across, then I would recommend tipping it as well, because just because it's raw doesn't necessarily mean it's wide enough. Rubber tips and or leather that are soft are explicitly not allowed, so take that off before you get there and retip it before you arrive. We're going to be tipping with thermoplastic. Thermoplastic is great. You can shape it to whatever shape you want. It's a nice hard plastic. It's cheap. The only problem with it is that it's not hard until it's cooled down. Right? It's malleable when hot, but until it's cool, it's not good enough. So it's very difficult to do immediately before you go into a pool. If you haven't managed to source thermoplastic or anything else beforehand, find us immediately at the start of the day to be able to retip your sword long ahead of the tournament starting. But preferably do what I'm about to do and do it yourself at home, because it's nice and easy. Amazon or Google search for anything that looks like polymorph, white morph, thermoplastic, thermomorph. Will come up with a dozen different brands. It is these white plastic granules. They could look like this, right? You can get black ones, but I would recommend white. It's easier for judges to see. And they are hard when cool, and when you heat them up, they become nice and malleable. A big bag like this, kilogram, far more than you're likely to need, costs about £10–15. Put it in a bowl. Okay, this is probably a little bit more than I need, but I like to have a little bit extra. You're going to want to have something to take it out of boiling water. You're going to want electrical tape to make it nice and secure, and you're going to want a cloth of some kind, of tea towel or hand towel or something like that, to damp it dry before you put it onto your sword, so your sword doesn't get rusty. Don't use kitchen roll, because kitchen roll will stick to the thermoplastic if you try and use that to cool it down. So take your kettle, boiling water. Actually, slightly less than boiling water is ideal. If you haven't got a fancy kettle like mine that you can set the temperature, boil it, leave it for a little bit, or take it off before it finishes. You need 70 degrees really, thereabouts. Pour it in the bowl. And you'll see the thermoplastic is turning from white, I'm not sure how well you can see, turning from white into a nice clear colour. With everything you got, just give it a bit of a stir so it's all nice together, right? Doesn't take longer than that. Take it out. And I've now got this piece. Push it all together so it's a single solid piece, See, it's no longer bumpy. And make sure to get it nice and dry. Okay, I would recommend giving it a first dry in one part, second dry in another, right? Just so it's nice, dry. Dry your hands as well, right? And then now I've got this nice dry piece of plastic. I'll roll it up into a ball. Cool. Take your tip. Push the plastic on it. Shape it in. As you can see, it's perfectly malleable. What you want to try and do, start with it relatively round and then shape it to the length of the sword like I've just done now, right? You want there to be at least a few millimeters of plastic above the end of your tip, right? You don't want it to stop at the end, so you've got plenty of room. You want to try and anything where it's not quite smoothed in like that, just try and get those so they are nice and smooth together, right? And that there is now done. I will have to let it cool down, right? Some small cracks there. If you don't like it, if it doesn't work very well, if it's got cracks in it, you know, just take it off, put it back in, cool it down, heat it up again, and do it again, right? And here we go. It's a little loose, but it's going to be fine because I'm going to tape it on later. So I'll come back to this when it's cooled down in about 10 minutes. It's been about an hour, which is mostly because it's my work day, not because it needs that long. This is now nice and hard. No cracks. A little bit at the bottom, but there's no issue with that, right? It's a little jiggly, right? Because this is a roll tip, it will stay on even without tape, but because it moves a little bit, just for security, I'll be adding a little bit of tape to the end. Colored tape is preferred by both us and you, because your hits will be easier to see if you have a nice bright tip. There you go. Shiny new tip. Better take any time. About 20p of materials in it. Well done. Again, please do it before the tournament.